Assalamualaikum everyone. Today, inshallah, we're going to have our first session about arrays. And you've already heard this concept before in the first semester in CSEN202 when we talked about lists. So the lists that you've heard in the first semester corresponds now to our arrays. In this semester, inshallah, next time we'll have a 2D array, and we'll say it by then. So it's the same concept. I will not explain anything new. However, we can just show you what do we mean by an array. It's the same like a list. So if, for example, I want to store, for example, 4 numbers, so I will need to have an array of size 4, and that's how we draw it. If you want to draw it, it's a 1D array. And for example, I can say that I have 2, and then 5, 6, and then 7 in my array. And what we'd like to do is talk somehow on this array. So for example, if I have this array, it should be given a name. So for example, I will call it array A. And it's the same like the list that we've talked about in CSEN102. It has a size or a length. And this length of this, and the length of this array is 4, which corresponds to the number of cells in the array. Okay? Okay. And now, this array is of type what? Is of type int. How do you know this? Because all the elements in the array are integers. And for your information, the array have only one data type, which means that all the elements in the array should consist or should have the same data type, which means I cannot have some cells having integer values and some cells having, for example, string or something like this. All cells should have the same data type, which is whatever you are creating the array with. So let's have another one. So for example, if I have an array like this, I have, for example, 2, and then 3, and then 4. The length of this array is 3. And could you tell me what is the type of this array? The type of this array is string. How do you know this? Yes, it contains 2 and 3 and 4. However, each one of them is contained between double quotes, which means that this array is an array of strings. Okay? And if I want to access, for example, this cell, I should be able to know the position of this cell. And the array is like the string. If you want to go to the first character in a string, you say char at 0. And if you want to go to the first cell in the array, you say cell of 0. So we start the numbering from 0. So this is 0, and this is 1, and this is 2. And if I want to access this cell, you just say, and for example, the name of the array is A. So I will say, go to array A and access cell number 1 of it. Okay? Okay, let's continue. If I want to have something like this, also the array is called A, and I have something like this. D, and then A, and then C. So this is what? This is an array of characters. Okay? Okay, let's continue with the last one. If I have something like this, what is the value or what is the data type of this array? It is double. How did you know that? The first cell looks like int. The second cell looks like int. However, the third cell contains a point, which means that this value is a double value. So be sure that this array should be of data type double, and it's not integer. Okay? Of course, also you can have an array of Booleans, so you store true and false, and you'll see, inshallah, if you do it this semester, array of something else, like array of objects. However, we'll not say this now. Okay, let's first start with the first exercise that we'll do today, which is the palindrome, and it's exercise 2 in practice assignment 9. So now the question says, write a Java program that tests whether the elements of an array consist of a palindrome. And a palindrome means that it's any word which is the same forward and backward. So you can read the word the same if you're reading it from left to right. It's the same like reading it from right to left. So something like radar or noon or Anna, both you can call them the same. So if I say radar, it's like radar, and noon, it's like noon, and Anna, it's Anna. So this is why these are palindromes. However, something like if I say GUC, no, it's not a palindrome because you say GUC, and if you go the other way around, you say CUG. So no, this is not a palindrome. Okay, so what we want to do is to test whether if an array consists of palindrome. And if you continue, it says that assume that the words are stored in an array of characters. For example, the word radar will be stored in an array like this, radar. This means what? This means that you have an array, and this array is of type, if you take a look at this one, it's of type characters, because the array consists of only one word. However, this array consists of several characters which make out the string. So we will have an array of characters. So far we'll continue back to the main method. We'll not have so far objects and classes. So I will say public static void main string args. And then I want to do what? I want to define a character array. To define any array, you first say char. If it's for a character, I mean, you say char, and then if you say x, then this means that this x is a variable containing only one character. No, I want to say that this is an array. An array can be visualized using the square brackets. So if you say char square brackets, this means that now I am declaring an array of type characters. If I want to have it for int, then I will say int square brackets x, for example. And then you have two ways, or actually more than one way to create an array. So first of all, if you want to create an array and you know periodically that the data of this array, so you can say char square brackets x, and then you open curly brackets, and then you give in the curly brackets the data of your array. So for example, if I'm going to test with radar, so I will say r, comma, a, comma, d, and then once more a, and then once more r. Okay? So far from this line, you have created an array of type characters, and this array is called x, and it has a length or a size of 5. Why? Because you give it 5 elements. Okay? Good. First of all, if you'd like to test or to see the length of this array, what you can do is you will say system.out.println, and then you will say x dot, like the string. When you want to get the length of the string, you say string dot, your string dot length, right? However, look at the difference. Here I will say x dot length, and that's it. Let's compile to see what happens. Okay, it compiles, and okay, maybe it's having something. Okay, it's freezing. Okay, maybe we'll open it once more. Here. I will say open. Let's say practice 9. So once more, we'll print the length. So here you have 5. However, if you remember the length of the string, when we call the length to get the length for the string, The length for the string, we've written it using, for example, if I say system.out.println, for example, GUC dot length, and then we write curly brackets. We don't write only length. So this means what? This means that if we compile, you get at the beginning 3, which is the length of the GUC, and then you get 5, which is the length of your array. So if you see the difference is using, for strings, you have the brackets after the length. And for the arrays, you don't have anything after the length. This means what? This means that the length method, that this thing, which is the length for the string, is an instance method that you call it on the string. However, let's remove that. However, the length for the array is an attribute. It's not a method. How do you know that? You know that because there are no brackets after the length. Okay? Okay. We don't need now the length for the string. Just remove it. And now, if I want to access, for example, the A, to print the A, I will say print, go to array X, and access cell number, and then C. This is cell number 0. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, which means that A is at position 1. So if I say print X of 1, I should get the value, which is A. Okay? This is how you can access and get the length of an array. Okay, good. I just want to show you something else. For example, if I want to create an integer array that has size, for example, 4, okay? I will say what? I will say int, and then square bracket, for example, C, and then I will say new. Why is that? Because an array is an object. So when you want to create an object, you say new. So I will say new, and then you say int, and then you open square brackets and give it the length, which is 4. So far, from this line, you have created an array of type int, and it's called C, and it has a length of 4. And if you want to be sure that it is length of 4, you can do something like this, print line C dot length, and then print. And then you see 4, which is the same size that you've passed in the square brackets. Okay? Okay. What if I say print C of, for example, 2? What do you think the output will be? Do you think we'll get an error? Or what will be the value that could be printed? First of all, there are no errors, which means no compilation errors. Okay? And if you run, you'll get a value 0. Why is that? Because for arrays, when you create an array and you didn't give it any values, by default, Java populate this array with the default values of the data type of this array. So if you have an integer array, the default is 0. So now this means that from this line, you have an array of size 4, and all the cells in the array are having the values 0. Okay? Good. That's if it's integer array. If it's double, it's 0.0. If it's string, you will get null, because null is the default value for the string. And if you have character array, then you'll have empty space, white space by default. And if it's Boolean, they will get the false. What else? That's it for now. So you need to know that when you are creating an array, I didn't give it any values. There are default values which are stored in this array. So what if I want to change the values of the default values of the array? So what you can do is something like this. You can say C of 0, for example, is equal to 1. And then you can say C of 1, for example, is, is equal to 2. Let's do it, copy and paste. And then I can say C of 2 is equal to 3, and C of 3 is equal to 4. And now if I would like to print anything, I can say system.out.println, for example, C of 2. Then I should expect the value of 3. Let's see. That's the output that you get. Okay? What if you want to print the whole array, which means you want to say print just C. If you do this, let's see what's the output. First of all, you won't get an error because syntactically you didn't do anything wrong. However, when you compile and you run, you get something like square bracket, and then I, and then at, and then a hexadecimal number, which means what? It means that this is the reference of this array. As we said, array is originally an object. And if you're going to print an object without having the toString overridden, then it prints the reference. The same thing happens here. When you just print the array, what's printed actually is the reference of this array. And to differentiate between array and an object, like that you create, it starts with the square bracket, because it means that this is an array, and I, which is the data type of your array, which is int, and then at, and then the hexadecimal, which is the number where your array is stored. So if I don't want to see this, then what you need to do is to traverse your array from 0 till the length -1. And what you will do is you will print each cell of your array. So I can do something like public. I can do it in a method to be able to print any array. I can say something like public static void, and then I can say something like display, and the display method takes as an input, for example, an integer array. So you will say int, for example, x, and then most probably you will need a loop. Why is that? Because you want to traverse an array, and the array could be from one cell to n number of cells, which are the length. So you need to have a loop to traverse through this array. So what I will do is I will say for int I is equal to 0, and the I is less than, I want to start from index 0 till 1 till the length -1. So I will say I less than x dot length, okay? Or I can say I less than or equal length -1. Both are equivalent, and then I will say I plus plus. Or what I'm going to do is I will just say system.out.println, and then I want to access each cell of the array. The array is called x, and to access the cell, you open a square bracket, and now you want to say, first of all, access cell 0, cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, then you reach till you reach the end, and you need a counter, which is the I, so you just pass x of I, and that's it. So this is the method that prints you the data in your array. If you want to check out what happens, now you can say system.out.print, and then call display, which is your method, and give it the array C. And now let's see what happens. Yeah, not print. You will say only display because it doesn't contain anything. You will say display of C. Okay, and let's run. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 printed from the display method. Okay? Okay, good. So let's continue back to the original exercise, which was to check whether an array of characters contains a palindrome or not. So once more, we have the radar, for example, as an input. And then what we'd like to do is we would like to check whether, to check the palindrome, we need to check whether the first element, which is at cell 0, is equal to the last element, which is at cell x.length minus 1. Why is that? Because this r is at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, the length of the array is equal to 5. So I want to check if 0 is equal to 4. If they are equal, then continue. I will check if A, which is at cell 1, is equal to the A at the cell 3. If they are equal, then I continue. And to do this, I need a loop because I want to traverse the list at each time from forwards and backwards. So what I will do is I will do a for loop. So I will say for int I equals 0, which means that I'm starting from the first cell, which is at position 0. And let's check the condition. I will say I is less than x.length. However, if you are checking the palindrome, do I need to traverse through the whole list, the whole array, or do you only need to check till the middle of the array? Only to the middle of the array, because it's a palindrome. Because once you're going from the left to right, at the same time you're going from right to left, so you don't need to traverse the whole array. Otherwise, it's meaningless. So I will say from I starts from 0 till it reaches the length over 2, because you want to check whether it's a palindrome or not. And I will say I plus plus. We'll add something in this condition to be able to check whether it's a palindrome and to break out if it's not. But we'll add it later. What you would like to do is, if I'm checking something like R with R, if both are equal, then I should continue to check the other characters. However, if they are not equal from the beginning, then I should stop. I don't need to continue. So I will add a condition here. I will say if I want to access a cell, right? I will say if x of I, which is beginning by 0, not equal to x of, and let's see what could be the index of this cell. Now, at the beginning, I want to check if x of 0 is equal to x of the length minus 1, right? The length minus 1, I can access it or call it using x dot length minus 1. However, if I keep it just like this, x dot length minus 1, now it's something static. It's not changing, because I will change the I. However, this value is the same. Why? Because the length of the array does not change. The array length of any array is fixed. It's static. It's not changing. So I will need to add something to this term to be able to, at the beginning, start from 4, and then go to 3, and then go to 2. So I will be decrementing this term, which means I will subtract from it something, and actually this thing is the I. So at the beginning, the I is 0. So I will say if x of 0 not equal x of length minus 1, which is 4. And then minus 0, then it's still 4. So I'm checking if x of 0 is not equal to x of 4. The next time, if I is equal to 1, then I will check if x of 1 not equal to x of, and let's see, the length minus 1 is fixed, which is 4. Minus 1, then it's 3. Then I will be checking if x of 1 not equal to x of 3, which means I'm checking with this value with this value. Okay? So that's why I need to have the I in this term on the right-hand side. Okay? Let's remove this. Now, if I found out that this condition is true, which means that I'm checking at 2 values, and I found out that these 2 values are not correct, are not equal. What I need to do is I need to turn out, to break out from the loop, right? Okay, to do that, most probably you will need a variable, like a flag or something, that negates or that make the condition of your loop false to be able to break out from the loop. So what I can do is I will say, okay, make a Boolean variable b is equal to false. Good. And if I want to do this, I need to first initialize this b with some value, and I need to declare it for sure. Then I can declare it before the loop. I will say Boolean b is equal to true. And then if it's not equal, then make it false. However, if you keep the condition of the loop as is, then you will do nothing. Yes, you are changing it to false, but it will not turn out, you will not break out from the loop. What you need to do is, you need to add a condition concerning the b in your loop condition. So I will say, continue in the loop as long as the I did not reach the x.length over 2 and the b is equal to true. Which means at the point that you reach that the b is equal to false, you should break out from the loop. So this condition will be false, and I will not be able anymore to access this for loop, and I will go out from the loop, and I want to print system.out.println my b, and you can add something like this. True means palindrome, and here I can say false means not palindrome. Okay? Or if you want to print palindrome or not palindrome on your own, you can check the value of the b with an if condition after the for loop. You can check if b is equal to true, then print palindrome, else print not palindrome. Okay? So let's first compile this. Okay, it's completed, and if you run, okay, you get the value true because I gave it as an input radar, which is a palindrome word. If I can say this is, for example, F, and you compile and you run, you get false. Why is that? Because first of all, you check the R with the R. They are equal, then I will continue. I will check the A with the F, not equal. So I will make the B equal to false. And when I come to the next iteration, I come to check this condition. This part is true. The I is less than the length over 2. However, this part is false because the B is equal to false. So, and this is a compounded term, and you have and, which means that both terms should be true to be able to go in the body of the for loop. Okay? So this was the first exercise in the 1D arrays. And let's go to the second exercise, which is somehow long, and it's very important. And it's exercise 6, which is, yes, this one, which is the mini-string exercise. And it was originally an exercise in the final spring for 2010 exam. So let's think of it. Here, you are asked to do what? You are asked to do a class which is called mini-string that looks like the string class. Okay, we have a string. By the way, the string is a class that's originally there. It's Java developers, they defined it, but you don't see it. But however, you can check it with the Java docs. However, this string class contains some methods, including, for example, the length method, the char@at method that we use, the substring, and many other methods. And what you are asked to do in this exercise is to implement a method that looks like, a class that looks like the string class. However, we call it mini-string. And you are asked to perform or to add some methods like the ones in the string class, including the length method, the char@, the concat, and the equals method in your class. Okay? And it states that you are not allowed by any means in this exercise to use the keyword string. Okay? And another thing which is very important is, here it says that many string objects must keep track of the character sequences they represent using an array of char, which means that a string is originally an array of characters. And for your information, a string originally is an array of characters. So that's why our mini string class will also have an array of characters that hold the string data. And you're not allowed to use regular strings within the main string class under any circumstances. And your main string should have the following methods. So let's start initially with creating a new class. I will say Control N. And I will name my class as mini-string. Okay? And now, let's see what will be my instance variables. First of all, it said that you should define a mini-string. Mini-string is a string. So, and we said that the string is an array of characters. So, this array of characters is what that defines your mini-string. So, I will have an instance variable as a character array, and let's call it, for example, list. That's it. This is my only instance variable that I need in this class. So I will say char array, and I will call it list. I can call it x, I can call it anything, I can call it anything. Okay, and then you are required to implement the parameterless constructor as well as the constructor that takes parameters. So first of all, let's have a look at the parameterless constructor. Once more, is this array created? Does it have any values? No, it's not. I need to initialize it. Okay, how can I create and initialize an array with the keyword new? So here I will say list is equal to new, and this list is of type char, and here I should give it the length. Do you have the length of an array? No, I don't. Why? Because this is the parameterless constructor, and it takes no parameters, so you don't have any input. So I will initially put it with the length of 0, which means that as if it's empty double quotes, because the user they don't give you anything. So I will just create an array. Yes, it's created. However, it doesn't have anything. Okay, good. Now, what you want to do is to construct another constructor, which is called public mini-string, and it takes an input, and this input is of the same type as your instance variable, which means that it is a char array, and I can call it x. Good. Once more, is this list array, is it created? No, it's not. So first of all, I need to create it the same way I did here. So I will say list is equal to new char, and then I should give it the length. However, should I give it 0, or do I have now a length to be passed? I have actually the length, which is the length of the x. And to pass it here, I will say go to x and get me its length. And now this means that you will have a list array created, which is of type char, and it has the length the same as the length of the array x that you passed in the parameters. Okay? However, for example, if this x array contains 3 cells, having, for example, A, B, C, then from this line, you will have an array. This is x, and this is the list. You have an array which also has 3 cells. However, there is nothing in the array. It's the default values, which are the empty spaces. Okay, what I would like to do now is I want to copy each value from the x and put it in the list. So I want to say put the A in the first cell in the list, and put B in the second cell, and put C in the second cell. So to do this, you need a loop to loop through the x to loop on the X list array as well as the list array. So I can say for int I is equal to 0, y 0, because the array starts with 0 in the numbering, and I is less than. Would you please help me? Should I write x dot length or list dot length? Actually, it's the same. Why is it the same? Because you've copied the length of the x in the list. So if you iterate till the x dot length or the list dot length, it's the same because both arrays have the same length. So, and I will say I plus plus. All what I'm going to do is I will just copy. To copy, you have something like this. You want to copy the values of the x and put them in the list array. So I will say list of I is equal to x of I. And that's it. Okay? So from this loop and after this constructor, what you have done is you have created an array with the same size of the input array, and you've copied each value of this array in your list array. Okay? Okay, good. Let's continue with the exercise. It says, okay, do the constructor, we've done it, and initialize, okay, we've done this. And then, yes, the second constructor, we did it. And then implement a method called length, which takes no parameters and returns the value of type int representing the length of the main string. Okay, let's look at it. We say public, and from the definition that it takes no parameters means that you get the length of any string, you should give me the string. However, if this length method is an instance method, then this method will be invoked on your string. So you don't need to give it any input. This means that the length method is an instance method, so I will not write static. Okay, however, I should write the return type. The return type of the length method is what? I give you the string and you give me the length. The length is an integer. So you say public int and it's called length. Good. As long as it returns something, then I should say return. Return what? Return the length of what? Of your list array. Because the list is a variable which is an array. As long as it's an array, then I can use all the properties of the array, including the length attribute. So I can say here, return this dot list dot length. Or you can remove this keyword from here. Okay? However, be sure that you need to access your instance variable, which is an array, and this array has an attribute which is called length. And in our definition in the constructor, that the length of this array corresponds to what? Corresponds to the number of characters that you stored in this array. So I can just say list.length. I cannot say return this.length and that's it. Meaning, I cannot say something like this. Return this dot length. This is wrong. Why? Because this dot length, this is what? This is object. Which object? It's the many string object. Good. And if you say this dot length, it means what? It means that access the instance variable, which is called length, which is found in my class. Do I have here an instance variable called length? No, you don't. The length is there, yes. However, it's an attribute from the list array. It's not from the instance variable from your main string object. So that's why I can't say length, this dot length. Okay? So I remove this. Good. This is for the length method. Continue. We want to have the char add. Let's think of it. The char add, the one that you know from the string class. You say what? You say, for example, GUC dot char at of 0, right? For sure, to be able to get the char, you need to have two things. You need to have the string and the position in which you want to get the char, which is the character. However, the char at is an instance method, so you will not pass the string. You will just invoke the method on the string. However, you still need to know the position in which you want to get the character. So I will say public and its instance, so I will not write static. However, what is the return type of the char at? So for example, I give you guc.char at 0, you should return me the g. So the return type is a character, only character, one character. And it's called char at. And you should give me an input, which is an integer describing the position you want to get the string, the character from. So I can say int I. And then I will say return, and then I want to access something which contains the characters and extract the position or the character at positions I. The something that contains your characters is the list array. So here you will say list, return list of I, and that's it. You can also add this dot and you can also remove it. It's optional. Okay? Okay, let's continue. We have the concat method. The concat method is also predefined in the string class, and what it does is it concatenates two strings. It's acting exactly like the plus operator when you give it between two strings. So it concates, for example, if I say guc.concat hello, it returns what? It returns a string containing guc hello. Okay? And of course, it differs the ordering. So if you say hello.concat guc, so you have the string at the output hello guc. Okay? So the ordering differs in the concat. So what you are asked to do is to implement the concat method. So let's first try the definition. We will say public, and then it's an instance method. Okay. It takes two parameters. It should take two parameters, the first string and the second string. However, as long as it's an instance, I will only pass one string, and the other one will be the method will be invoked on it. So it returns what? It returns a string. However, I'm not allowed here to use the string keyword. So what can I do is I will use my class, which is called ministring. So the return type will be ministring, which acts like the string. And it's called, the method called concat. And it takes as input also a ministring. It doesn't take a string because I'm not allowed to use string. So I can say, for example, string input. Okay? And let's see. Now, if I have guc and hello, and I want to concat both mini strings. The mini string consists of what? Array of characters. So I have guc, G, and then U, and then the C in one array. And the other array has, for example, the H, the E, the L, and the O. Okay? This is the first mini string, and this is the second mini string, and I want to concatenate both strings. What you will have at the end is something like this. As we said, I will have as an output hello, guc hello. Okay, guc hello is stored in a mini string because you return a mini string. And a mini string is originally an array. So I will have an array containing G, U, C, and then the H, the E, L, and the O. Good. What is the size of this array? It is 3, and this, it's 5, and this, it's 8. Why is it 8? Because it is the summation of the length of 3 plus 5. because you are adding the two strings or the two mini strings in one mini string, which is an array. So I need to have an array that can accommodate both strings, so it needs to have the length 8. Okay, however, of course, you need to have something dynamic, not just 8. It's any length that I can have. So first of all, this is a new array, right? A new one. Where is it? You should create it. Okay, then I will say char, for example, output, out, is equal to new char, and give it the length. The length, as we said, for this example, is 8. How can I get this 8? You will say, add my length plus the input length, right? Good. What is me? Me is this. This dot, if I want to access my length is stored in the list array in the length attribute. So I can say this dot list dot length, and I will add what? The length of the list, which is the input. So I will say input dot list dot length. This part is very important to understand, because you need to understand that this means my object, which is a mini string, and the input is what is mini string. So both are mini strings, and both have the attribute list as instance variable. So I can access both objects, and I can access both instance variables, which have the same name because they are instance variables, and I can access the length of each list of them. Now I've created an out array of type char. It has a length, in this example, of 8. However, originally, they are all empty. Why empty? As we said, because the default value of the characters are empty spaces. What I would like to do is, I would like to populate my array with what? With the values stored in both arrays. So I will have something like this. Let's see, it's 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there are 8 cells. And what I want to do at the beginning, I want to what? To get the G and put it here, get the U, put it here, get the C and put it here, right? To do this, I need a loop. Why? To traverse through. To traverse on the first array, which is my array, and put it in the out array. Okay? And this one is easy. I will say for int I is equal to 0, and I less than what? List.length. Which list.length? My list.length. So I can say this dot list dot length. And you can also remove the this from this term. And I will say I++. What you're going to do in this loop is just to populate or to put your data in the output data array. So I will say out of I is equal to your list. Your list is what? Is list of I. And of course, you can say this dot list. Okay? Good. So far, you terminated this loop by what? By adding exactly here G, U, and C. Okay? Now what? Now you want to go to cell number 3 in the out array and start populating the second array and putting it, putting the data in the second array in your out array, right? So to do this, take a look at this index. This index is 3. And you will need to put in index 3 the value in cell number 0. Okay. This means that you want to have another variable starting with, or counter, starting with 0 to be able to access the first cell in the input list array. So what I will do is I will say something like int k equals 0. And for your information, this k is counter for the input list array. Okay? And I will say for int j is equal to. Now I will traverse on the out array, which is this one, and I will populate it with the data from the input list array. Okay, I will start my counter of this loop with what? If you start with 0, this means something. This means that you will override this data. However, you don't want to override them. You want to start with index 3. However, 3 here is fixed. I don't want to have a fixed value. What you will do is you will start with, take a look at this array once more. The length is 3, right? Which corresponds exactly to the cell that you stop or you want to start from in the out array. So what I can do is I will say for int j is equal to this dot list dot length, which is 3 in this example, and the condition will be j less than the length of your output array, which is out dot length, and you will say j plus plus. What you will do actually is two things. You will first populate the output array, and let's write it. We will say out of j is equal to, you get the value from what? You get the value from the input list array. So I will say access the input mini string and get me the list array of it, and put or access the cell number. You want to start with 0, as we said. So I will say the 0, I can get it from the variable which is called k. Okay? However, I have something missing. This k now is not changing. I should change it, and I should actually increment it. So I can say k plus plus, and that's it. Okay? So this is to do what? Do the concatenation of the two mini strings. However, I have something missing at the end of this method, which is, take a look at the signature of the method, the definition. It returns what? A mini string. Okay, where is it? It's not yet returned. What you need to do is, you have a return statement. You say return, and actually it returns a new mini string. So you say return new mini string. And by definition, the mini string takes as input an array of characters, which is, for now, the out. Just write it out, and that's it. We know that it's an array of type characters. However, the array is called out, so you just pass the out as an input. Okay? Good. However, there's something added here, which is, if the mini string passed as parameter is null, then the method must return a reference to the mini string on which this method is called. So far, we've created or defined our method, which works perfectly if I have two strings that should be or can be concatenated. However, what if someone tells me concat GUC with nothing, with nothing? Then what should I do? I should just return the GUC. Okay, so to do this, you need to have an if condition from the beginning of the method. I will say if, once more, the statement is concatenate GUC with nothing. Nothing means the input is nothing, and the input is an object, and the nothing is an object means it's null. So if an input is equal to null, then I will return and see what's called here. You must return the reference to the main string on which this method is invoked. So I will return this. What is this? This is an object. When you return an object, then you are returning the reference. It's like printing the object without a toString. So I will say if an input is equal to null, which means there is nothing to concatenate the GUC with, I will return only the GUC, which is this. Else, I should do all these things. So I will put all this in an else statement between curly brackets. Okay, and I can indentate them. Okay? Okay so far? So this is for the concatenate. Let's continue. We want to add a method which is called equals that checks whether two mini strings are equal, which means that if I say GUC equals GUC, you should return true, and if I say GUC equals to AUC, you should return false, because there is a G and A different, so you should return false. So let's create our method. Here, I will say public and its instance. However, it returns true or false, which means it returns Boolean. And it's called equals. And it takes as input mini string, because you need to have two mini strings, one in which the method will be invoked, and the other one you should pass it as a parameter as an input. Okay? So, and also you are asked to do what? If you have this one empty, which means it's null, you should return false, because that's what the definition says. It says that if the mini string passed as parameter is null, then the method must return false. So here I will say if the input is equal to null, then I will return false. And then let's see the else part. First of all, let's think of it. If I'm asking, check if the GUC is equals to hello. Before going actually to the characters and check whether the G is equal to the H and the U is equal to the E, first of all, I can say for sure this is false. Why is it false? Because the GUC has length of 3 and the hello has length of 5. So for sure, the two mini strings are not equal. So what you can do is, you will add a condition. You will say if this dot list dot length is not equal to input, which is the input mini string dot list dot length, then automatically return false, and don't need to go for the for loop and check whether the two characters are equal to each other, because the length originally is not equal to each other. Okay? So if the lengths are not equal, then just break out and to return false. Okay, else. Else means something like you are now comparing not GUC with hello, but you are comparing something with the same length. For example, I'm comparing GUC and dot equals GU, for example, B. Okay? So what you need to do is, I need to check if the G is equal to the G, then I will continue. If the U equal to the U, I will continue. If the C equal to the B, they are not, then I should break. Then what you will do is, you will need a loop. So I will say for int I is equal to 0, because you're iterating over the two mini strings. For int I equals the 0, and I is less than any one dot length, because from coming to this part means that the length of two arrays are equal. So you can just write any one of them. So I can say, for example, this dot list dot length, and then I will say I++, and then I need to have a check. I will say if what? If the G is at position 0, right? Is equal to the G, which is at position 0. However, these are arrays. Let's remember, these are arrays, not the strings. Okay. Now what I want to do is, I want to check if this G is equal to this G. And I need to check the index at 0 because the G is at 0, and if it's equal to the G at 0. So I will say, just take a look that this is originally an array. It's not a string. So an array, to access it, I need to get the index of the position that I want to access. So I will say if this dot list of I, this means what? This means that this is my main string dot list, go access its instance variable, which is a list, or it's an array, and access cell number 0, which is at the beginning it's 1, it's 0, and if they are not equal to what? To the input dot list of I, this means what? This means that at the beginning, assume that I have here G, here it's G, and here it's H in an array. If the G is not equal to the H, then I should break out. Then I will just say return false. Okay? Okay. And I will not have any else statement. However, be sure that if you did not go to this line, this means that so far you have the two mini strings having the array values the same, which means after this for loop, if you did not return in the intermediate stage, then after this for loop, you have checked that both arrays have the same data. So what I want to do is I want to return true. Okay, and this return true will be after the for loop, not in an else statement for this if. Why is that? Because if it's not true, if this condition is not true, which means that both characters are the same, I don't need just to return true. No, I need to iterate over the whole array and then return true at the end. To do this, you return true at the end, which is after the for loop. Okay? Good. Now, the last thing is we want to test our class with a main method. So let's remove this. And now let's create, for example, two mini strings that we can concatenate, for example. Okay, I will say public, static, void, main, and then string args. By the way, I want to say something. By now, you should be able to know what is the definition of the main method stands for. So public means it's public, anyone can see it. Static means it relates to the whole class. Void, it doesn't return anything. Main, it's called main. And what's here is the input. And we say string square bracket args. This means what? This means that it takes as an input an array of strings. And this array is called args. By the way, I can say string A. It will not say anything. No compilation errors because it's just an input. As long as I'm not using this input in the body, so I can say anything. However, someone might think, why do I need an input? I've never given a main method an input. You might see it at the end of the semester, but so far we'll not explain this now. However, you should know that this thing means it takes as an input a string array, which is called so far A or args or whatever. So we can keep it with A. And now what I want to do is I want to create a mini string. So I will say mini string, for example, min1 or m1 is equal to new, because it's an object, new mini string, and then let's see. If we didn't pass anything in this constructor, then we will call the parameterless constructor, which is this one, and it will create for you a character array of length 0. However, if you want to go to this constructor and have an array which contains something, then you should pass for me an array of characters. This means what? This means that at the beginning, you need, before creating your mini string, you need to create an array of type character. So I can say char square bracket C is equal to, and I can give it directly the values. So I can say, for example, G, and then, U, and then C. Okay? So this is my first, let's call this C1. So this is my array character of characters, and here I will pass the C1. Okay? Okay. Now what if I want to create another mini string and concatenate both mini strings? So I will say, I will take this copy and paste, and I will have something like C2, and here I will have B, for example, U, E, and here I will have mini string M2 is equal to C2. Okay? And now, let's do something. Before you concatenate, I can get, okay, I can even add BUE, for example, O, anything. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to get the length of both mini strings. So I can say system.out.println, and then now we will call the length method, and you will invoke it on whatever object you want. So I can invoke it on m1, and I will say m1.length, and I will have the same one but for m2. And let's see our compilation. So it's completed. And if you run, you have 3 for the first object, which is m1, which you passed an array of characters of length 3, so you have 3. And this one, BUEO, you have 4 because you have 4 characters in this array. So what I want to do now is I want to concatenate M1 and M2. And if you take a look on the definition of the concatenate method, it takes as parameter mini string, and you invoke it on a mini string, and it returns a new mini string, which is this one. Okay? So to do the call, you can do something like this. I can say mini string M3 is equal to M1 dot concat, and then I can pass the M2. Okay? And now you can compile and you can run. You won't see anything because you didn't print anything, right? Okay. What you can do now is the following. I can say if I want to access, for example, you know from here that the M3 contains GUC and BUEO in one array, right? What you can do is something like this. You can say system.out.println, and then you say print M3. If you just call print M3, let's see what happens. What's printed actually is what? Is the reference, as we said before, because there is no toString method here defined that prints you the values of the list, right? However, take a look at this one. If I say m3.list, the list is what? Is an instance variable, right? However, it's an array. And if you remember from the last time when we printed an array, we also get a reference because an array is originally an object. However, if you print this one, let's see what happens. You get GUC BUEO. You don't get the reference of your array. Why is that? Because it's something extra. However, you might need to know it that only for character arrays, when you print them, what's printed is not the reference. However, what's printed is the value of the data inside these arrays. Only for character arrays, which means if you are printing integer arrays, string, Boolean, anything rather other than a character array, what will be printed is the reference. However, for only the character arrays, what will be printed is the value of the data in this array. So by now, here, I can just call m3.list. And by the way, I can do the same for m1 and m2, which means that I can say print m1.list and m2.list, and you can see the output under each other. Okay, run. I will have GUC BUEO and GUC BUEO, which is the result of the concatenation of both strings. However, once more, if this list array was not a character array, then what will be printed is the reference, not the data in this array. Okay? Okay. Let's now try to see the output of if you concat not M1 with M2, if I concat M1 with null. Okay? And let's print it. Let's compile and print. So I will get only the GUC. Why is that? Because from the definition of our concat method, we said that if imp is equal to null, return this. This means what? This means that we returned the M1. Okay? And now, yes, we turned M1 in the M3. And then if I'm saying M3.list, then I'm also accessing the list of M1, which is the C1, which is the GUC. Okay? So as if you're concatenating GUC with nothing. So you have only the GUC. The last thing that we can do is to try the equal method. And I can say here, for example, something like M1 dot equals M2. Okay? I should expect output. First of all, it's Boolean because the equals returns a Boolean. And I should expect something like false because the GUC is not the BUEO. So I should have false, which is the output. However, if I have something like GUC and M2 contains also GUC, then I should have the output true because the GUC is equal to the GUC. Okay? And that was it for today. And inshallah, next time we'll continue with the second topic of arrays, which is the 2D arrays. And have a nice time. Goodbye.